today. So I am the Director of Sustainability for here at McHenry County College. And those solar panels outside was one of my very first projects. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit about that later. It was really a fun thing to do. Well, okay, mostly fun. I'm also the president of the board for the Defenders. So we're really delighted to have the Defenders here today and make this amazing event get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Sprague, our chair of our committee that is putting these BMPs together, and I'll be back in a little while.
Great, thanks, Kim. So again, welcome to everyone. Feel free, if you haven't grabbed refreshments, grab a cup of coffee or some lemonade and some cookies, and then sit back in. I'm really excited for you to hear our talk today, Energy Savings During the Illinois Solar Revolution. As Kim said, this Friday's BMP Talks and Tours is co-sponsored by the McHenry County Department of Planning and Development, and I know Joanna Coletti's here from that department, and then the team at the Defenders that is the lead on this series is our Water and Natural Resources Protection Team. So just wanted to give a shout out to people who from that team who are helping today. Nancy Glissman over at that table, Pat Lawler standing right there. We also have Defenders members Pat and Terry Dekoff, who also are solar ambassadors for the Illinois Solar Energy Association. So if you haven't talked to them at the back table, please do that before you take off today. So we're so glad to have you here for our second talk and tour of this series. Before I introduce Hal, I wanted to just let you know about the next talk in this series. And similar to what we're going to be hearing from Hal today about solar energy, we're going to be hearing about electric vehicles at our next session. So the title of that session is a how-to guide for communities on electric vehicles. So we hope you'll join us again in June. That's at 1 p.m. on Friday, June 17th. It'll be in downtown Woodstock. We're going to meet at a parking lot in Woodstock where we'll ask you all to park, and then the Defenders Executive Director, Cynthia Canner, is going to tell you about the effort that the Defenders did to get some EV chargers in that parking lot. So we'll start off there with the tour part, and then we'll walk over to stage left, that's right beside the Woodstock Opera House, if you know the place, and then we'll be hearing from Tim Milborn, who's with Greenways to Go. So excited for that. I'm especially excited for us to hear today from Hal Sprague, who's the Community Solar Coordinator for Trajectory Energy Partners, and so I know Hal is excited to be able to share what he knows with all of you, that he enjoys being part of the growing solar industry, helping residents, businesses, faith communities, schools, and government entities understand their options for going solar and developing solar projects on their own. Hal lives in Evanston, where he's a board member of Citizens Greener Evanston for 15 years. And he's also currently a member of the Evanston Climate Action and Resilience Plan Implementation Task Force. That's a mouthful. The short name for that is CARP, and their goal for Evanston is to be carbon neutral by 2050. And then following Hal's talk, then Kim's going to tell us more about the solar array here at the Shah Center. So take it away, Hal.
Thank you, Cindy. I don't want to stand in front of anybody. Let's get over here. So I want to tell you about starting at the high level. We know what CEJA is, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that got passed last September. Before CEJA passed, we've been working under what we call FEJA, or the Future Energy Jobs Act, which passed in 2016. It was the first time that the state of Illinois allowed community solar the way we know it now. And they did a really good job of putting a lot of money into both the rooftop type of solar and also the community type, where we have a lot of solar panels out in the field, and that money ran out. So they tried to fill the gap quickly with the next law that is now CEJA, but it took them longer than it was very complicated. It took them long. So we kind of have this waiting period between the two laws. The money ran out in the old one, and we have a time frame where we don't have anything kind of in the pipeline yet. The applications for the new projects under the new bill, which is like 10 times the amount of money of the old one, which is great because that means they want that much more of solar projects to be built. But we're kind of in the middle now. The applications are due at the end of this year. All right, some of them in the summer, but and they won't get built until next year. So there's sort of this period of nothing getting built this year under the new law. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about CEJA and how the different parts of it you can save money in several different ways. So again, last September was when CEJA was passed, followed on the successes of the Future Energy Jobs Act and the benefits, as you probably, some of you have heard these things, 100% clean energy, this is now what our legislature wants us to be doing. And they've said it's even before 2050, and they're rushing because they want hundreds of thousands of panels to be built in the state, and they're throwing many millions of dollars at this, which is a good thing, and you can all probably play a role in this and get a project of one kind or another, and you will save money. Believe me, you have the opportunity to save money. So we're rapidly expanding, what we were doing under the old act. So it's very complicated, and I'm not going to make you into experts on CEJA, but it's 950 pages plus. It's a national model. This really is probably the most complete energy law of any state. And there are federal energy laws, but state by state by state, we have lots of different kinds of energy laws around the country. This one moves us to 100% carbon free. It expands on many of our existing programs. You're probably very familiar with the energy efficiency programs. And so they're throwing more money at that to make sure they keep going. We read the paper, we hear about the utilities having some difficulties, and they're now cracking down on some of the behavior. So that's what that means there. A lot is in there about EVs and throwing some money and changing policies on transportation. And also a really big part of CEJA is making sure that these programs are equitable and really aim at the low and moderate income people as a priority. So I'm going to put that little circle up there, and we call this the portfolio. This, if you can imagine, this is ComEd if you're up in this part of the state, or Ameren if you're downstate, and it's true for both of them. The places where they get their electricity are made through nuclear power plants, coal power plants, natural gas power plants, and some renewable energy. And that's the breakdown. When you turn your lights on, you're getting basically a mix of the electrons from these different sources. So the state wants us to change not necessarily the right side of the circle, but we want to change the green part to being the entire rest of the other half, right? So we get rid of the fossil fuels. And the good news is that when somebody builds solar and it goes into the grid, ComEd and Ameren are required by law to take that first before they take any fossil fuel-based electricity, which is a good thing. So going back to the early 2000s, they passed a law that we call it the RPS, or the Renewable Portfolio Standard Law, which requires ComEd and Ameren to increase the amount, that part of the circle, to 25% by 2025, and we're way behind. And so that's why they passed the Future Energy Jobs Act in 2016, and then CEJA now to accelerate that process. The nuts and bolts of a law like this are generated by an agency. There is always a bureaucracy. The legislature doesn't sit down and write a bunch of rules. In this case, we have the Illinois Power Agency that's been in existence only since the beginning of the 2000s, I think. And they write all the rules, and so they've got a long document. We call it the Long-Term Renewable Resources Procurement Plan. It's also really long and complicated. But the point of this slide is to just remind you of the Renewable Portfolio Standard requirement, and then the different kinds of solar projects that they are funding, subsidizing so that we can have more, are distributed generation, also known as rooftop, also known as behind the meter, for all those terms. Those are all the same thing. Traditional community solar, which has been going on now for a few years. There is a new program for public schools that's a separate, different money and different setup just for solar systems that are set up on school property. And there's another new program called community-driven community solar, and I'll describe that more in a few minutes. And then there is another set of projects for equity-eligible contractors, people who are building and owning and operating solar projects who are either people of color or other minorities that fit into that category. And then an old program that they're continuing, Illinois Solar for All. Many of those programs that I've already put up there can be part of the Illinois Solar for All because when they serve just low and moderate income communities. Okay, so let's start with behind the meter or distributed generation. You would put on your house would be called distributed generation or behind the meter. Goes directly into your building, and all the energy is going there, and then any excess is going to go out into the grid, and you get credit for that. Well, if you do a small project, by and large, this is sort of a generalization. If you do very small projects, you're probably going to end up paying something up front for that, and you get savings over time, so you kind of get that back over a long period of time. If you have a large enough project, and this is an example of this, in Rockford, downtown Rockford, that is the sports factory, and there's about 2.5 acres of roof on that, and we are putting together, we have put together an application and received approval for it, for that to be a behind-the-meter project, so that all the energy will go into that building, and they pay nothing for this up front. They're going to get a lot of savings, and when they pay back to the owner and the operator of those panels, they will be paying back less than their savings. They will always be saving. They never pay a dime more than they're paying already. So that's an example of a great new kind of project. And we use a system called a power purchase agreement. Many of you are probably familiar with that, and that's how that works. So it's a contract between, the customer is the property owner, and the developer is some company like Trajectory. And as I said, no upfront costs. The savings on the utility bill is always going to be greater than the payments for the power purchase agreement. So they're always saving money. The length of time is typically 20 years. And also the landowner or the property owner has no responsibility for maintaining the panels. So there's really, it's a win-win for them. And so I don't know if they have, okay, so that's rooftop or distributed generation. Community solar is very different in that if you can't or don't want to, for whatever reason, put panels on your own roof or any roof, you don't have a roof, you can put panels out in a field, and that's called community solar, and the energy from that goes into the grid, not into your facility. There is, again, when it's large enough, no upfront costs or investment, and so it's sort of very similar to the behind the meter that's large enough. All the words on here are very important, so I have to go slow enough so that you get it all. The community solar developer is going to build and maintain the solar farm. Power is going into the grid, and it's mixing with all those other sources that I showed you in the portfolio. So when you turn your lights on, you get that mix. Even if you are a subscriber to a community solar farm, you're still getting ComEd's mix of electrons, because that's what they can't direct solar electrons to your home. But residents and businesses, churches, nonprofits, anybody who has a ComEd bill can be a subscriber to a community solar farm. And when you do that, you have a certain number of panels that are attributed to your subscription. So for example, if you have a home with a family of 4, and you look at your electric bill, or they look at your electric bill, and they say, over the course of a year, 12 months, you use so many kilowatt hours of electricity. That means, we think you need 25 panels in your subscription, or it might be 30 panels, or it might be 45, or if you have an electric car, maybe it's a few more. But that becomes your subscription. It's a set number of panels, and every month, whatever those panels produce in energy, you get credit for it on your ComEd bill. And there's another little piece of math that goes on there. You get a credit, and then you have to pay them back for the energy, but they give it to you, they'll give it to you at a discount. So I'll just give you sort of a very simple example. I think I have a slide for that in a second. Yeah, here we go. The regular bill is on the left, and if you kind of know your ComEd bill, you have a supply part of your bill, a delivery part of your bill, and the taxes and the fees. When you're in community solar and you're subscribing, they will subtract from the top part of your bill the amount of power, the dollars that reflect the power that's generated by your allocation. So your bill is going to be less every single month. And if your allocation generates more than you need to make that top part at zero, they save it in a bank. And another month, when they don't produce enough, you get to use that. So you never lose your credits. And in this case, I'm not sure if they have a discount, but you can consider this kind of like a coupon. You would be buying $100 worth of solar credits to subtract from your bill, but you're only going to pay $80 for that. So you get a 20% discount. That's an example of a typical community solar subscription. You'd be getting like a 20% discount on the electricity that you're using from the farm. Anybody, any questions on that? I ran through that quickly. Yeah.
Recently, I understand that residential offsets can go higher than like about 105%. Is that accurate at this point?
Residential offset.
Your offset is how much you can actually generate from your system. I was always under the assumption that you can't really put a whole lot more power into the system because the grid can't handle it at that point. And that's why that big Rockford project was curious to me.
Yes, yeah. I've heard that, and I don't know the particulars about it, but I know in some cases I've heard people say either ComEd or the company that I'm dealing with won't do my house for some reason. It's too much or something. And I thought maybe you would know more about that one.
And again, I think it's changed recently. I think you can now.
Yeah. Well, the law has changed so that, for example, on the right-hand part of this, the right-hand bill, the amount of credit that they wanted to be able to give you from your solar panels would only be enough to cover the top part of the bill, and only the top part of the bill. So you see where it says purchased electricity charge or electric charge and then transmission. It only covered the first line. Now under CEJA, not only can you do include the second part, so that gives you, it covers more of your bill, and therefore you get a bigger discount. But also, it's not really related to your bill anymore. So, there is the concept of the people who are getting, using an alternative retail electric supplier, right? An Aries, R-E, and A-R-E-S, and Aries is an alternative. So somebody like Dynegy or Constellation is selling you 100% renewable energy and giving you a lower rate. Have you heard of that? Some people have that? Well, it used to be that if you had an alternative supplier, you could not be a subscriber to community solar. And now you can. Under CEJA, you are allowed to do both, so you can get a reduced rate, and you can have this coupon. And it can apply to a much larger part of your bill. So you can get, I don't know if you can buy all that you want, but you can cover more of your bill than you could before. So it's really a better and better deal as time goes on. If I didn't say it before, I'm going to repeat it. There is this waiting time. So if you wanted to apply for a subscription today to a community solar project, you'd be on a waiting list because the ones that are already built are going to have people leaving, and they need to fill in behind them. So the people who are on the waiting list will be plugged in where 25 panels went to this family that went to California. We need somebody in there to use those 25 panels, and you could be on that waiting list. You could also be on the waiting list for a project that hasn't been built yet. They will be built next year. So with a little bit of patience, you will get onto one of these things. It's just a matter of time.
I just had a quick question. So community solar is separate from having solar panels on your house.
Completely different.
It's like something that you sign up for.
Right, and it's only on paper, really, because when you do the panels on your house or on your business roof or wherever it is, that energy is going directly into your building, and you're using it right away. And if you have what's called a net, you have a smart meter, and the excess is going into the grid, and ComEd's going to pay you for that excess, right? And then you're also getting ComEd power in the evening. But in this case, in the case of community solar, you don't touch it. It's nowhere near you, and you just get on paper, you get that credit. But you are, the good thing that you're doing also is you're helping support the continuing scaling up of all this. And so if people didn't sign up for this, we wouldn't get off the ground. They have to fill their farms, or else they wouldn't be doing it. They wouldn't continue.
I would just want to say that after talking to Hal and some other people, I signed up for a community solar project that's over in Winnebago County. It's the Kishwaukee Solar Farm, and I waited a number of months, but now it's generating power, and I'm getting a bill just like you.
Yeah. But you're also getting a second bill, right, from Clearway, and that's because that was under the first act, and they didn't change the rules yet. In a little while, this year, I hope, they will have to eliminate the second bill, and you'll have it all show up on just the ComEd bill, and it makes it more streamlined. I mean, that was people were saying, as soon as they found out they would get a second bill, and they'd have to pay that, even though they get the credit and the savings, I'm not doing this. No, that's too much, too complicated. Just one more bill, and do auto pay. How hard is that? But it got some people wigged out.
And this is available to any entity, commercial, residential.
All you have to have is an electric bill from ComEd. So if you're in, for example, Winnetka, they have their own utility. You can't do it in Winnetka, actually. And you also have to be within a certain set of rate classes. There used to be this. It's changing. It's so constantly changing. In the first set that we worked on, if you were a park district, and park districts would be really, you could save a lot because you use a lot of electricity in most cases. But if you were in a rate class that was like really big and you were getting a much reduced rate, you weren't eligible. So that has also changed. So there's just more opportunity today than there was even 6 months ago. So it's great. Just some of the requirements for this community solar. If you were going to be, oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. How do you find out if your facility would be eligible?
If your house or your
No, I'm talking about like school.
Okay. I would say you have to talk to a company that's doing rooftop, or you can talk to me and I'll see if I can. If it's big enough, we may do it, but it does have to be large enough for my company to want to do it. But I think you have to talk to a company that is installing rooftop.
Well, I'm talking about community solar.
Oh, we wouldn't put that on the roof.
No, I know. But if we just want to purchase renewables. Through community solar.
You want to be a subscriber?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's
Right, so then you have to go to the companies that have already built their solar farms. And there are, if you go, for example, to the Cub website, there are probably 6 or 8 that are listed there. I think you would even have that. It's on one of your pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And then the ones that haven't been built yet, you could talk to me, and we'll probably be signing people up. But again, if you're patient, you will get in that. It's just a waiting list today. They won't. What we're doing right now is, my company is applying to build a certain number of projects. These are big. These are 10 to 40 acres, and we're looking for landowners who want to rent their land. That's the primary goal here, is to find that entity, that farmer or somebody who owns, or a school who owns land near the school and isn't using it. They can have their own community solar farm, and it goes into the grid, and then they can be an anchor subscriber. The school can, and then other people in the community can also be subscribers to the same solar farm. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, and this could be park districts, any municipal land, business land, just anybody who owns land that they're not using. Can't have trees or wetlands, but it has to be near a 3-phase electric line, which is not usually too big of a problem. It has to be flat, of course, and we're not going to cut down a bunch of trees to do this. That would be horrible. And the leases generally are in the range of 35 to 40 years. And another interesting part of this is, or they're related, environmentally, when we build these, by and large, we're planting pollinator species all under and around the panels. So it's not just turf grass that people are out there mowing, they're actually creating a habitat for pollinators while they're also generating electricity, which is a cool thing. And then the other thing is that when the panels, the leases say, the documents that control the agreement for the land, when these panels are no longer useful, and if the landowner wants to just terminate the agreement and not, like, I don't know, replace the panels with more, up-to-date panels or something like that, the company has to remove them all and put the land back the way it was. So in one sense, you could look at it as a 35-year term that is temporary, and eventually that land can go back and you've preserved the land. If you sold your land for development of condominiums, that's not going to happen, right? And then if you do this, you've actually preserved the land for to go back to open space again, if that's what the landowner decides.
Can you build on an old municipal landfill? That's
Funny you should ask, because it's been done. There's a project in downtown Rockford that was a quarry and then became a landfill, and it was hazardous, so it had a cap, and it was a brownfield, and couldn't do anything with it. Now it is actually an active solar farm in downtown Rockford, and not only that, but it's an Illinois Solar for All project, so that only the low and moderate income people in Rockford can be subscribers, and they're saving 50% on all their on their subscriptions. Yes, sir.
Why can't we build these things on all the parking lots of all the shopping malls?
That's a good question, and I've been told that it is X times more expensive to do that than it is on a piece of ground, and so that's the only answer I've been given, is it's just really a lot more expensive, so nobody wants. If they have a choice, they're going to do the other before they do that. But it's a good idea, I think,
So there's no incentives,
There's no extra money for just that, to take care of that gap in.
Maybe that'll be in the next bill, to incentivize.
Advocate for that, advocate for that, yeah, I would say.
And you get shady parking spaces too.
Yeah, I would say just plant trees, because you also need stormwater management in parking lots that doesn't exist, right? And we need to have more trees in parking lots to take care of all that rainwater that's in there. That's another story. Cindy and I know all that story. Okay, so there's a special program for public schools on their land, and specifically for them to be the owners, and not the owners, but the hosts of a community solar project. It could be either actually on their roof, or it could be on land adjacent to the schools, and we've done this in certain cases.
Is that K-12?
It's any public school that is under the Illinois School Code. It could be any age, doesn't matter. But it does have to be their land.
Okay.
I just, no, go ahead. No, good.
And then there's also different categories for what are known as Tier 1 and Tier 2, which I believe have to do with, I don't know, that's environmental justice regions. Cindy, do you know what that means? Tier 1 and Tier 2 schools? I should probably.
Yeah, I don't know specifically, but I imagine that because there are regions that are, or areas that are listed as environmental justice areas,
Right.
so I think that's what.
If your school is in an area that's a Tier 1, you probably have more of a subsidy than Tier 2. But anyway. And schools do often, in rural areas anyway, often have large roofs, and it's unused land. And they also have the interest in educating their students on solar, and Kim can tell you all about that. She's got a great story for how the students can learn from the project. Okay, so another new category here, and again, I'm sorry for the complicated nature of this, but this is what you get when you get the bureaucracy. They come up with all kinds of ideas. This category is called community-driven community solar, and the idea is that it provides more direct contact with the community itself. It isn't just the company coming in, building this thing, and then subscribers who may or may not live anywhere near it. But instead, we are putting up one of these in Rockford, and my job right now is to go up to Rockford frequently and meet with many different people and ask them, the people who live there near this site, what are their local issues and what are their programs that they're put in place to deal with those issues. It might be housing, it might be jobs, it might be food, local food, it might be youth after school things, programs. All of those things are local issues in Northwest Rockford, and there's money that goes into these projects from the state, and then we are required to turn around and give some of that money to the community to the tune, in these two cases that I'm working on, of $150,000 to $200,000. So again, in this, I'll give you the example in Northwest Rockford. We're working with Habitat for Humanity. They have already built a lot of houses there, but as they go forward, we've learned that they're only building about 7 houses a year under their current number of people that they have doing the work and their amount of money that they get every year to do it. And we can probably give them some money to increase the number of houses they do every year. They've got a backlog of 800 families that are waiting for housing, but they don't have the money to do, even 20 houses a year. So we're hoping that we can, some of the money from these projects can go to helping them do that. So as you can see up there, I'm just repeating what I said. There's economic development. Here's another slide on. There we go. Job creation, job training, education opportunities, economic development, involving the people in the area with the design, and that probably means is going to the site, looking at it, going, oh, we really would like to have screening along this road here, so we don't all look at the panels from this angle, and we'd like these kinds of trees or bushes put there. So they're actually we can create a community committee to help actually design the look of the place, and all of that is going to go into an application for the community-driven solar project to get it approved. And of course, there's always going to be subscriptions. So if somebody is the landowner and they're going to say, I'd like to rent my land out for this, they can be the subscriber to the facility ultimately and save on their electric bills. They will also be the hosts to hundreds of families in the area that can be subscribers. So for example, a typical 2 megawatt, this is an Illinois Solar for All project that the example is, so that's the low income. It could serve 500 to 600 families as subscribers, and overall save them annually $125,000 to $150,000 on their bills. And then really cool is that ComEd has piggybacked on top of that savings, and in our Kankakee project, which is called Gar Creek, and actually the one in Rockford too, the one that's, that I described on the landfill, they have the Give Array program, and they are promising that every year each subscriber is going to get a maximum of $83 a month, up to $1,000 a year to cover their electric bills, which for some people completely eliminates their electric bill. And these are low and moderate income families, so that's a really neat kick for them. And ComEd is taking care of all of that. If you're a municipal facility, your municipal land can serve as the host, be the anchor subscriber. It might be a park district, school district, just administration. They can, if you're an anchor subscriber, you might have something like 10% of the output from the system as a subscriber. It says the projected annual savings are $6,000 to $10,000, but then there's also the taxes. Well, I guess that's if you're the municipal host. If you're a landowner like a farmer, you would have two things. You'd have the lease, and you could get somewhere like $15,000 to $20,000 a year in lease, and you would also get taxes of the same amount. So you have an agricultural parcel that is very low taxes because it's in agriculture, but we built the solar panels on it. Now the value of the land has gone up, and now property taxes are much higher. The company that's the developer pays all of that. The landowner doesn't have to pay any of that excess tax. So again, no upfront cost and no additional cost to the landowner in doing this. And just as a psychological boost, you can know that as a subscriber or the host you're going to be helping the state of Illinois meet the 100% renewable goal. In the projects that I worked on earlier with Clearway that were put in under the Future Energy Jobs Act, there were 16 sites in northern Illinois in the ComEd service area, and Northwestern University has taken up as a subscriber 1/4 of every single site, which is huge. That's a large, I don't know if it's like 1/3 of all of their electricity, but they are saving quite a bit, I'm sure, but they are also setting a good example by being subscribers to all of those sites. OSL Healthcare, you're probably very familiar with them since they're all over Illinois. They are the largest nonprofit healthcare company in the state, I believe. And they have many small sites, so they've been subscribing to both Ameren and ComEd location sites. So again, 2 endorsements of the community solar system, I think. Illinois Solar for All, I mentioned, this can be part of any of those, or most of those kinds of community solar projects that I mentioned, and it gives, to provide the low and moderate income people access to the solar when they can't put it on their house, and it gives them a bigger discount than the non-low income people. And they don't have to have credit checks and things like that to make it difficult. So let's see, it's distributed generation, which means they can be putting panels on their house for free, pretty much, and community solar subscriptions, and also this works for nonprofits and public facilities.
And that the Environmental Defenders has just gotten approval for funding a small solar farm on property that we own on Dean Street, just south edge of Woodstock, and it's funded through the Illinois Solar for All program. So the Defenders itself, its office and its bookstores will be the tenant subscriber. We're not big users. Then we have Defenders members that are interested in subscribing, and then of course we will need to be finding 40% low income subscribers to be a part of that project. So we're pretty excited about that.
Do you know how many acres that is?
Well, we only own. I can maybe look up. It's one. Maybe Pat or Terry will remember better what the size. It's only like a 1 megawatt or smaller.
But that's still pretty big.
A little bit smaller
Facility.
than 1, just a little bit less than 1.
A little bit less than 1. Yeah.
1 megawatt. Okay, so it's like maybe 5 acres or something.
Yeah. We own about 7-8 acres there, but we have a lot of wetlands, and
Right.
of course, being Defenders, we said we got to design this so that we're not impacting any wetlands and that we're the proper setbacks. So that's why it ended up being, a small kind of irregularly spaced array to just be on the highlands of the property.
Right. Cool. That's really. Yeah. So actually, that picture on the right there is the downtown Rockford former landfill site. So that's before the panels are in. That's when they were just starting to set them up. So that's probably a year old. But that whole field now is covered with panels and is serving a lot of low and moderate income people in Rockford. So that's pretty cool. Oops. So just the commercial part of this. Trajectory is Illinois-based company. The boss guy, John Carson, who's second from the left on the bottom of that picture of us, lives in Highland Park, and we're really doing 90% of our work in Illinois. And we don't build, own, and operate these sites, but we understand all these rules, and so we are getting together we do all the zoning, we do the land due diligence, we do the community outreach work, so that we can put together the applications to the state Illinois Power Agency and get approval for their being built and for the money to be released. And then we will sell the project to a company that actually does all that, but we sell it under the conditions that I've been talking about. We make sure that we have an agreement that has all the conditions, so they will be either giving out money or building in a certain style or design, and everybody's happy that way. Rockford Solar is again the landfill one on the left. Gar Creek is a much bigger facility on the right. It is also the low-income one. Both of those are include that ComEd give-a-ray program, so there's a lot of great savings to everybody for that. The process from our standpoint is very simple. We do the community engagement. We meet with the leaders of the community, explaining the process like I'm doing now. Hopefully, making more and more people aware who are property owners and potentially interested in doing this. Gather your ideas for how to do it better. We put the application together to the Illinois Power Agency, and then that takes a couple of months, as you might imagine, because it's a competitive process. There's only a certain amount of money. They don't give every single project approval, but then when they do approve it, it can be built, and all those great things can happen. But these things are going to take, from today, standing here today, if we said let's start one right now, it might take a year or 18 months before you actually get to the end of the road. And so again, this is kind of a little bit of a repeat. We try to create local coalitions of leaders. I've want to create in Rockford an advisory committee so that even after the thing is built, we have students and parents and business owners, leaders who are all going to be able to meet and learn from this project and feel like it's part of their community, not just some thing out there that somebody's taking their money and running away with it, so they can feel like it's really part of their community. I just like to list the kinds of entities. Trade unions are involved, lots of nonprofit organizations, lots of neighborhood groups are all involved in this, in the Rockford project, and also we're going to have more in this whole area. But that's kind of more of the same level of press we got from John going around the country. And a little more about those two sites. There are many sites. This has been going on now for a few years. So these are sites that are, the one on the top right, that's the sports factory in downtown Rockford, which hasn't been built yet, but it's the rooftop, a very large rooftop facility. So that's a good example of having enough roof to do a facility for free if it's on a rooftop. Another thing about these that I mentioned a little bit before about the pollinator species on the bottom, you can see an example of the habitat that they created with the pollinator species. On the left, it gives a pretty good idea of what these things look like. In Illinois, most of them are going to be able to be on very flat land in long straight rows, and they can put them on bars that go like this all day. So it creates about 30% more energy by having it be able to move like that. They're called single axis trackers. Can't always do that, but I've even heard that agriculturally, the bottom thing, some people ask about can sheep graze under these things? And the answer is yes, I think they can. So we can have maybe 2 or 3 things going on at once. And then another thing is some of the panels, not the one at Gar Creek, I've looked at those, but some of the panels are double-sided. So they actually reflect up from the snow and add even more energy to so they're even more efficient. So lots of technology, and it's changing all the time. That's it.
Can you put your contact information up there one more time, please?
Yep, and I think we can probably make this available it will be available on our website.
Oh, thank you. I thought you needed, it sounds like you might need
It's
some
getting a
water.
little scratchy.
Yeah, but one thing we can do is Destiny's been taping, and we'll send a follow-up email to you. We can send Hal's contact information, and then the link to the videotape. I'm sorry.
The Trajectory Energy Partners website is at the bottom of that, and if you go there and search around, there's a lot of information on all this, so you don't have to remember it all or take notes. And I did have a handout too. You saw the one pager. There's more there. Okay.
I think we got time for questions, so people just, I'll grab Hal's handouts and pass them around, but folks keep asking questions.
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear anything about grid storage. Is anything going on there? Does CEJA cover any of that? And for those that aren't familiar with the problem, all the renewable sources, whether it's wind or solar, are extremely spiky. And one of the downsides of that is to fill in those spikes. ComEd has to turn on their dirtiest, most polluting plants to smooth that out, to flatten out the production curve. And grid storage is needed to fix that. Anything going on there?
I can't answer. I just don't know. The interesting, if we are pushing out the fossil fuels, then what's left is nuclear, and at least that emission issue is reduced or eliminated. Eventually, hopefully, we'll also get to eliminate the nuclear, but for now, we're trying to eliminate the emissions. So I would think at night, when there is no sun or there is no wind, it's going to be the nuclear plants that are holding up, that are doing what you just said. And as far as storage or batteries go, I have not heard anything. I don't know if CEJA really addresses that. But during the daytime, actually every hour of every day, the system operator, which is a quasi-governmental entity, has to predict every hour how much energy ComEd needs in the system. So it's this giant swimming pool of electrons. And from history, they know from a year ago and the year before that, on May 13th, this many kilowatts was necessary. So they bid that out from all the sources, which includes the nuclear power plant and all the different, natural gas and coal. And they get the best deal for ComEd, because ComEd can't own anything. They're not allowed by law to own any of that. The controller, the system operator, bids that out and gets for this hour, and then this hour, and then this hour. So the day before, they know exactly tomorrow how many kilowatts they need tomorrow at 5, and then again at 6, and then at 7. And then the same day they do it again, just to make sure. And so it's all like incredibly organized, but ComEd has nothing to say about that. They just accept all the electricity. It's because it's a just-in-time system. It has to go in and out at the exact same time. It has to all be in there. And I suppose if there's extra, I don't know if it leaks out the side or if it goes up the stack or whatever it does, but it has to have at least that much. And if they don't, there's a brownout or there's a blackout. That's the way. It's a kind of incredible thing that we all rely on every day, and most people don't have any idea how that works.
Folks have more questions? Go ahead.
Since you have a choice between behind the meter or community solar, would you recommend one or the other, and what kind of factors would influence your decision?
Well, I think if you can do behind the meter on your building, if you have, some people have the right trajectory of the roof and all, and if money is not a problem because you don't fit into one of those categories that gives you a free system, but I think you should do it because it's, if you like the idea. Now, I put it on my garage before I found out about community solar, and now I have a little bit of a hesitation because I'm not trying to say anything bad about it, but now they're mine, and now if something goes wrong with them, they're mine. And if I want to change my roof underneath them, I have to pay somebody to take them off and put them back again. But there are programs where you can lease them and you don't own them, right? And then that company would take care of that. And if you're community solar, it's one more step removed, and you don't have anything to do with them. The company takes care of all of that. But you get a much less of a savings doing it that way. You might get $150 a year, $200 a year, whereas eventually, if you have the panels and you've paid off the cost, it's going to all be free during the daytime. So it's probably a bigger savings. So it's a trade-off, and I think there's no right or wrong to that at all.
Thank you.
Did I say that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Terry and Pat have solar on their house, so they'd be good people to talk about that.
Yeah, I think one thing I would want to add is increase the value of the building and or your home resale value when you put it on and it's yours. And they, it varies amounts that they pay, but at least the
solar agreement, if you're a subscriber, they say that you can transfer it to the next owner. But to me, it's just as easy for you to cancel yours and have them start up their own. I mean, I guess if people don't want there to be a gap in it, they have to sign the agreement and you transfer it to them and all that. That can be done too. So that it could also be a little bit of a value to them if they want to have that savings.
Hal earlier mentioned that you could go to the CUB website to learn more about community solar. That was a great resource to me when I was trying to learn about it. Their website is citizensutilityboard.org, and then they've got tabs there. The tab Solar in the Community is all about community solar, and it's great on answering questions. And Pat's got a printout there,
Of the charts.
the chart of
Community solar.
what the different companies, what their terms are for community solar. And does that show actual facilities that are subscribing right now?
Besides the company.
Yeah. I don't think it should. I think you have to
Doesn't
call the
show where
company.
they
Yeah.
are.
So then you'd have to, like Pal's saying, you'd have to call the company and find out if they have any facilities you can subscribe to right now.
Probably on their website, on the company's website. If you went to like Clearway, for example, you go onto the Clearway website, subscribe here, or MC Squared, or Nexamp, and they'll tell you how to subscribe. And if they're honest about it, they'll tell you, you're going to be on a waiting list, and maybe guess at how long it'll be before you're actually turned on somewhere. But that's kind of where we are right now. It's almost everywhere you're going to be on some kind of waiting list.
Are you just, are there not enough places to put panels right now? Is that?
There are not enough panels
Not
out
enough
there.
panels,
So if we had the typical 7,000 panel field and it's fully subscribed, but people are going to believe it. So I talked to Clearway the other day about this, and I said, so if somebody comes to me and says they want to subscribe to your panels, they said, yeah, we'll take them. In fact, our models tell us that this year we're going to lose this many people. They're going to leave the state, they have to move their job or whatever. So they're going to be, I don't know, guess 150 panels that are going to be empty. So we have a pipeline. We want that waiting list to fill them in, and our waiting list right now isn't big enough to do all this year's things. So you're probably going to get on their site before the end of this year if you get on their waiting list now. So that's just sort of typically how they're looking at it. They have to keep it going, right?
Kind of like Bears season tickets, in other words.
Right.
Decades to get on.
Maybe, okay.
Well, and also, I think there was a lag between when the CEJA money basically ran out
Yes, right.
and when the CEJA law got passed, and as Hal said, there's 100 times more funding?
10 times more, maybe 10 times more funding.
10 times more funding.
But-
Because I know
But they
here at
haven't built
McHenry
yet.
County,
They haven't approved the sites yet. So,
Yeah.
Because we haven't even had the deadline for applications to go in yet. So we can't. So that'll take another, the end of this year, we'll have applications going in for sites that can be built. And it won't happen until next year. They'll be built, and then subscribers will want to build them next year. So, but from now until then, you're waiting a year or more.
but here in McHenry County, the county had approved a number of sites, but only like 4 to 5 of them got the
State funding.
incentive funding under CEJA and moved forward. So we have land in McHenry County that's approved for community solar, where probably those developers are moving forward to trying to get the
Approval.
approval and get the state funding to allow them to go ahead.
Yeah, and the first time when they did it in 2016, and there were there were who knows how many applications there were, they decided to have a lottery, which meant they weren't based on merit at all. It was just taking the name out of the hat. And so my boss, actually, John Carson, he probably got 20 sites with leases and zoning and everything. He had it all lined up, and he didn't win the lottery. So he had nothing out of that. But fortunately, they put all those on a waiting list, and now under CEJA, he's going to get to build many of those sites and go forward with them. So sometimes it takes an iteration.
And that happened to the vendors too. We were in a lottery, and the first 3 picked were much bigger than our site, and they took up all the credit.
Right.
So we're excited that we now have the go-ahead and the state funding for our project too.
That's great.
Any more questions for Hal? And it looks like Kim's maybe ready to talk about MCC's Adventures with Solar. Thank you so much, Hal.
Sure.
If you guys think of other questions for Hal, please feel free to interrupt me and so you can get the information you need from him. I won't take too very much long. I just want to tell you a little bit about our experience here at MCC. So this is a live dashboard of the current array that's outside the building right now. And I'll show you that other one in just 1 second. So there's actually 2 solar arrays out there in that field. There's a big one and a tiny one. So I'm going to tell you about the big one first. So in 2014, well, let me back up. The college is part of a consortium called IGEN, which is the Illinois Green Economy Network. We're the community college sustainability directors in this state that we get together and find that things work better when we ask for things in big groups. So it's worked really well, and so IGEN had a grant process going on. It was a 60-40 match, so we only had to pay 40%. Too good to pass up. The most that they would give us was $250,000. So this is not how I recommend you cite your plan or cite your solar thing. But the most they could give us was $250,000. So that was the 60%. So then we figured out that our half was $169,000. So then we could build. We had $419,000 to play with. And that's how we figured out how big a site to build. Again, not usually the recommended way to go about things, I get that, but it seemed to work pretty well for us at the time. So we, like I said, that was June 2014, and by December, we were fully operational. It took us a little bit longer to build it. We ran into boulders buried in the yard out there, so a little bit later, we can walk down the hall, you can look at some of the pictures. Boulders like half the size of this room. So that took a little bit, it was a little tricky to get those out of the ground as we were trying to build our racking system. I kept getting these calls and like, we found another one. So in the backhoes and anyway. So again, don't really recommend that part. But there are 336 panels out there plus 4 teaching panels. So that is our second little array out there that we put 4 panels on one racking system. That particular one is an adjustable racking. All the rest of the 336 are static, they don't move. It was designed to power about 65 to 70% of the power needs for this building, the Shah Center, and that was true for about 1.5 years until IT put a bunch of servers out here. So then it's not really that much anymore. So it's closer to around 45 to 50%. And we get these weird little spikes. For the longest time I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on, and it's the servers. So they do their thing, and all of a sudden we get this giant spike in energy. And so beware if your IT people find out there's an empty closet in a building somewhere that will mess with it. Let's see what else I want to tell you about it real quick. So when we were building it, and you guys might run into this too, it's really interesting because we got all these, the poor Shah Center people got all these calls. What's going on out there? You guys building a greenhouse? Like they just, it took us a while because of those ridiculous boulders. So everybody driving up and down 31. And I loved it because it meant people were paying attention. They were looking at it, and they were asking the questions. My favorite, and I tell this story a lot, so I apologize if you've heard it before, but my favorite story are the group of citizens, and there were about 40 of them, that were very, very, very concerned that the reflection off the solar panels was going to make the helicopters crash coming into the hospital. So not really what solar panels are supposed to do. They're not supposed to reflect. If they're doing that, we have a problem. So there's a lot of education, and we spent a lot of time. The McHenry Library at the same time is also working on a solar project, which was great because we sort of banded together and did a lot of education and a lot of discussion with their city council and all that stuff. Was really good. So I mentioned the teaching panel. So the educational component of this whole array was a couple things. So we built those 4 panels, that small 4-panel thing on that adjustable racking, so students could come out here twice a year and then change it around and look at the different angles and look at the energy produced. Also, those 4 panels are 4 different manufacturers. There's 2 Chinese manufacturers, 1 German manufacturer, and a different U.S. manufacturer. All the 336 are different U.S.-made panels. It's been interesting to watch since then, the fluctuation with those other 4 panels. Actually, I can bring it up in just a second, because that's a different dashboard. It's a different inverter. But one of the Chinese companies has gone out of business, and their panels have dropped off significantly. They do not produce like they were producing before. And the German panels are pretty consistent. It's just been interesting to see kind of the different operations. The only issue we've had, Hal was talking about owning the panels, and I will say that was a big concern. about a community college owning 336 panels in 2014 when it wasn't really all that common. But we worked through it, and the only really thing that we've had happen was in 2021, we had an inverter fail. So something dropped off, and all of a sudden I was looking at the dashboard and we got this like, whoop, I'm like, whoa, geez, what's going on? And then thankfully the systems alert you to that. But we had supply chain issues, so it was almost 8 months before we could get the part. So that was kind of a bummer. But now we ordered an extra one just in case. But that particular inverter was just, for whatever reason, was faulty, and it wasn't a big deal to fix it. And there was no cost to us to fix that either. What else would I tell you? We did not put pollinators underneath. Trust me, it was a conversation enough to get them built. So I was happy to get them built. But some days it would be nice to look into maybe doing that at some point. They'll put the pollinators underneath there. I'm just checking to see. We used to have a partnership in place with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, where we were offering some classes towards those certifications that you need for installers. That kind of fell by the wayside, like so many things with COVID. So we're trying to get that up and going again. Do some of those virtual classes. We do have a number of students. We have an energy resources class, and some of you guys might know Ted Ersky. He brings his students out here 3 times in the semester, and his lab students 3 times in the semester. They play with the racking system, so I always get an alert. There's like something going on out there, but and they do all sorts of numbers and calculations and stuff. And I actually just found out about a month ago that one of our math classes has been following the dashboard and doing some data calculations, which is kind of fun. So the dashboard story. So this is directly from our company, the Sunny Portal, that is one of our inverters for our big system. Enphase is the one we use for the smaller one, and now we have a small solar installation at main campus up by our greenhouses. That was went online last summer, and that's designed to power our high tunnels. They create just enough power to the fans and the doors and all the stuff for the high tunnels. The Enphase invert, the Enphase, let me see if I can bring that one up quick. When we first installed the whole installation, we had a really good partnership with a company called Lucid, and Lucid, maybe it's not going to come up. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is the Enphase inverter. Again, this is only 4 panels, so the numbers are quite different. But you can play with it. You can look at the different solar equivalencies over there. Those are the things people like to play with. How many trees, how many this, how many that. But the company that we worked with, like I said, was Lucid. They built us this beautiful, beautiful dashboard that we had in our big cafeteria area. It was a touch screen, students could interact with it, and it was wonderful. It was pricey, I won't lie to you, it was very, very pricey. It was about $3,000 or $4,000 a year. And then we built our cool science building, and we went to add it to our Lucid contract, and they wanted $35,000. So we don't have that contract anymore, big surprise. And actually, that's one of the projects I have on my to-do list for the rest of this year and early next year is apply for some grants to do a new dashboard system and but for now, we've got these guys, and this one's pretty fun. Like I said, here's the solar equivalency. You can play with this, a lot of the different things that they can offer. You gonna turn for me? Or at least say no jokes today. There's all, like, if you are looking at these kind of educational components, happy to chat with you. Hal and I were talking earlier. It is something that I'm really researching a lot of right now because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of dashboards that are coming out that are maybe not what you want and have a lot of hidden fees. So if that's something you'd like to follow up with me, I'm happy to have those conversations because I'm in the middle of researching it. You might as well use my information. The College of Lake County just went through this process last year. They shared all their horror stories with me, so I've got their resources as well. Kankakee College also has been going through it right now, so we're all kind of working together to find a good dashboard that can be something we can use and something we can interact with and isn't going to cost us $1 gajillion. Huntley High School, where the BMP thing was last time, they do have really nice kiosks, and he and I have been talking a little bit about what what they're using and how they like it, and whether the students interact with it and stuff. I'm more than happy to take everybody outside if you want to go. I know it's 1,000 degrees outside. I can't even see what it is, and I don't want anybody to melt. But while you're here, if you do have the opportunity, I encourage you to walk down my hallway. There are some beautiful photographs that we put together. You can imagine we have bazillions of photographs, but really told the story because where the field was, you see some pictures of those boulders because oh my god, and then the whole story and the whole thing with some photos. So I encourage you to walk down there. If you'd like to go outside, I'm more than happy to do that. I'll hang out in the hallway in a little bit, and if anybody wants to go, we'll walk outside. It's not that far. So thank you so much. Any questions about that?
Oh, I have a question. Does the school have a field of study that goes directly into renewable energies necessarily?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Fingers crossed that we can do something like that.
Sure.
Like I said, we've done some non-credit stuff with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, trying to get that up and going again. The wind technology, wind turbine technology is another really hot area that I'd like to go to get some classes. Start with non-credit and build from there.
The reason I ask is we're always looking for people with some basic knowledge, obviously, of the industry, and always happy to talk to them if they're.
That would be great. I'm always needing people that are looking for that to make that point. So that's great. Hey, John?
The college obviously owns the panels. Then did you have to get like certified electricians to come out and maintain them, manage them, things like that?
Well, the company that built it is Windfree. We dealt with Windfree, and they have their own crew that will come out if there's any issues. We don't do anything to them. You know, seriously. I mean, we have electricians on staff, MCC, if there's something, and like I said, that inverter, the fail, that's the other thing people call me all the time. There's snow on the panels. Oh my God, come out and sweep the panels off. It'll melt. Promise. It'll melt. That was last year. I don't know, man. I think I got like 16 calls. Like, oh, it's snow, and they're like, it's gonna break and all. It's not. It's okay.
More
I
than
promise.
30 years.
You do more damage to it if you try and sweep it off than you will just leaving it alone. So, any other questions? Thank you guys so much for coming out here to Shah Center. It's been really, really nice to have you. I'll let Cindy finish this up, but like I said, if you'd like to walk outside, we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kim. I just wanted to make one comment about planting pollinator plants and prairie plants under solar arrays. Back when CEJA passed, then the county got this rush of companies proposing community solar on farmland in McHenry County. And so the county had to kind of rapidly figure out what their rules were going to be for permitting solar farms as a conditional use on ag land. And I think they did a really good job. They've got a pretty good model ordinance. One of the things that our Defenders Committee really pushed for was this idea, as Hal talked about let's plant them with native plants. And so that is a requirement in McHenry County. If you're building a solar farm in unincorporated counties, unincorporated areas, so you fall under the county's ordinance, you do need to plant the fields with native plants, and then any screening is with native plants.
Are you familiar with the state certification, or there's like a guide or a certification for pollinator species?
Yeah. I think McHenry County kind of goes a little beyond that. What Hal's saying is there's kind of a state certification. I actually have been putting together a fact sheet. I need to add some more things just from our conversation today, but when we send you out the link to the video, I'll send you the link to that fact sheet, and it has that state scorecard on it. What the county has done that's really good is they put together a performance standards memo that tells solar developers what they need to do in terms of really keeping the weeds out. You know, we want you to put down prairie seeds, but the most critical thing is controlling for weeds, especially the first 5 years. So that's one of the links on that fact sheet. So.
I forgot to do the commercial for the Sustainability Center. I'm so sorry. So our 2022 Green Guide just came out. So if you need some copies, there's plenty over there. There's English and Spanish over there. Also on our website, easy to download. Lots of good stuff in here on the back for all the events that are happening, shredding, recycling, electronics. And we are having another household hazardous waste collection event in the end of June. This is the second. We had one last year. We haven't had one for 17 years. So it was really a great thing that we're getting to. Plus, we have our very cool Earth Day pens. These are made from wheat straw, no plastic, just wheat straw. So please help yourself to a pen. They're over there. And they write really well this year. Thank you.
So we've got the room for, until 3, so I'd welcome you to check out the displays, grab some more refreshments, ask Kim and Hal questions, check out the display in the hall that Kim talked about, and then hit Kim up if you want to go out and look at the panels. And well, any of us here are happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you for coming today, and we hope to see you at our June session where we're going to learn about funding for EV infrastructure.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I mean, batteries are the common thing, but this hydro.
Thanks, Al.